Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So, this week surprised me. A lot. I was gearing up for a Juice WRLD album bomb that would make my life miserable, and to my amazement, it didn't happen. In fact, we got a pretty average week here on Billboard Breakdown, where Juice WRLD did make an impact, but nowhere close to what I was expecting. And that leads me to some questions about his label and his management that I didn't expect I would have. Hell, I knew the kid had a short shelf life, but I didn't expect Interscope mismanagement to be the biggest contributing factor. I just thought the album being crap would have done enough. But alright, back to our top 10, where to the surprise of pretty much nobody, 7 Rings by Ariana Grande reclaimed the number 1. And again, this should be no surprise to anyone. Even if she's no longer the top in on-demand streaming, or YouTube, or sales, she's got enough traction across the board in all categories to get there. But Sunflower by Post Malone and Sway Lee is not that far behind. With better sales and only slightly lagging on streaming, shame just the radio wants to push this out now. Now, we also saw a rebound for Without Me by Halsey up to number 3, although this seems to be coming more on slight radio gains than anything else, because it's lagging both on streaming and sales. And I predict it's probably overtaken on the Hot 100 by Please Me by Cardi B and Bruno Mars at number 4 right now, as soon as that radio margin is narrowed. Even if the streaming and sales are down, the YouTube is immense, and that radio push, it's happening. But then we have the surprising pickups for Wow by Post Malone up to number 5. Likely boosted off of a big remix that saw a rebound across the board. It might not be the full second wind it needs, but it'll be interesting to see how far it winds up going. Now, most of this is helped along by Sucker by the Jonas Brothers falling off the number 1 down to number 6, as expected, but it's got the considerable radio traction and the sales, they're not going anywhere, especially given how it does have some modest streaming presence. This might actually stick around. Hell, it held up over Happier by Marshmello and Bastille, which actually gained a spot up to number 7. And okay, seriously? Even if the radio is getting sick of this, can we just move on already? Now, granted, the pickups for It and Middle Child by J. Cole to number 8, which seems to have some streaming and finally a bit of radio, but little else, it's probably more linked to the collapse of Shallow by Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper down to number 9, which might be ruling sales and seeing a radio revival, but is seriously lagging on streaming. And finally, somehow clinging to number 10 against all odds, we got Sicko Mode by Travis Scott. Even as the radio bleeds and the sales are evaporating, the streaming is holding this up. But for how much longer? And while we're on this perilous territory, our losers and dropouts. Now, a few notable ones in the latter category. Leave Me Alone by Flip Dinero and Mo Bamba by Sheck West. They're both gone, having clinched year-end spots for 2019. Joy. And a classic example of singles cannibalization, Armed and Dangerous by Juice WRLD is gone too. Then we got our losers, most of which seem kind of all over the place. Again, I'm surprised that Girls Need Love by Summer Walker and Drake is sputtering at 52, or that Look What God Gave Her by Thomas Rhett crashed hard to 82, taking What Makes You Country by Luke Bryan down with it to 90. Now, granted, there are a few that aren't all that surprising. I predicted that Faucet Failure by Ski Mask the Slump God would have a bad week, and I was right as it went down to 99, along with Always Remember Us This Way by Lady Gaga continuing down to 100, Nights Like This by Kehlani featuring Ty Dolla $ign continuing to 95, and I by Little Skies losing a lot of momentum to 57. Now this leaves us with Ella Queer Beber by Anuel AA and Romeo Santos down to 81, but given that it's got nearly 400 million views, I can imagine YouTube fluctuations might be the culprit here. I can't tell. Now for our gains and returning entries, well, the story might seem a little bit more interesting than it actually is. For one, Khalid and Kane Brown saw Saturday Night's return to 78, likely in the build-up to Khalid's album in April, along with the expected return for Girl by Maren Morris off her album released to 61. But I'm kinda mystified why Pure Cocaine by Lil Baby came back to 72, and our gains have the same mix of predictable and kinda weird, mostly coming off debuts. Thanks to the album release, I'm not surprised that Hear Me Calling by Juice WRLD is up to 38, and the video likely has contributed to Pure Water by DJ Mustard and Migos up to 40. And hell, a similar build-up probably has helped Billie Eilish push Wish You Were Gay to 59, and the memes are apparently making Old Town Road by Lil Nas X a thing for a minute, surging up to 51. And sure, I can even understand why Act Up by City Girls is rising up to 63. It's got the streaming, but why in the nine hells has Put a Date on It by Yo Gotti featuring Lil Baby up to 56? I tracked through every channel and I'm coming up with nothing, folks. I'm not seeing where this song is getting traction or popularity. Please explain to me if you know. But now we get to our list of new arrivals. And unfortunately, we're gonna start off with number 96, I've Been Waiting by Lil Peep and iLoveMakonnen featuring Fallout Boy. I'm not doing fine, but I'll do it for you. So I think it's important that this is exposed again. I mentioned how iLoveMakonnen has been assembling songs from the scraps of the late Lil Peep's back catalog since last September. Yes, this song was intended for a collaborative album, but most of it was unfinished, and you can definitely tell that iLoveMakonnen is milking whatever is left to regain some traction, with this being a lead-off single with a Fallout Boy guest feature. Now I'll say this, it's better than when iLoveMakonnen put the late XXXTentacion on Falling Down. I could imagine Lil Peep actually wanting to work with Fall Out Boy at some point, but it still feels icky and exploitative that iLoveMakonnen is still pushing this, and I really wish I could believe that Fall Out Boy were better than this to participate. And when we get to the actual song, no, I'm sorry, I can't endorse this, especially with the production. The guitars are perfunctory opposite the sandy hand claps. The runny but compressed vocal delivery from Patrick Stump and Lil Peep feels squished into the song in a really unnatural way. The bass groove seems imported from a modern 5 Seconds of Summer song, which is not a compliment. Hell, the entire song feels like a mono-genre pileup that's more here to serve iLoveMakonnen than anyone else. And when the content's all about craving this bad relationship, it unfortunately reminds me of all the reasons I didn't much like Lil Peep in the first place. I'm sorry, especially with Fall Out Boy here on autopilot. So yeah, this isn't good. Next, number 92, Calma by Pedro, Capo, and Farruko. So here's the thing, I remember talking about a Farruko song way back in December of 2017. It was a collaboration with a bunch of other people called Crippy Kush. I guarantee the majority of you forgot this existed or that this guy was on the song opposite 21 Savage and Nicki Minaj. Anyway, that was originally Farruko's song when he was working with his reggaeton trap blend of Future and Migos, and now he's back on the remix of Pedro Capo's song. And you know what, here's something I'll give Farruko. Much of the music that he's hopped on tends to have a lot more texture and depth in the production than your standard reggaeton clunker. There's a little bit more guitar, the groove's got a little bit more organic punch and support, and while the hook does feel a little slow with Pedro Capo's crooning, there's still a depth of tone in the production that I can kind of respect. Granted, if you're looking at the content, it's hard to avoid the feeling that it might just serve as a slick hookup song merged with a free tourism ad for Puerto Rico. I can see this becoming ubiquitous on certain resorts in a record time, but I can't exactly blame them or deny that this is a good song. Yeah, I'm okay with this. Certainly a hell of a lot more than number 91, Flaws and Sins by Juice WRLD. With all your flaws and sins, your scars are really gorgeous. Ain't that a weird way to give compliments? The first of only 4 Juice WRLD songs here, and honestly, not one that I seem to dislike as vehemently as someone that actually missed the Hot 100. There's worse on the album. Now, it's still cheaply produced and overcompressed, especially in the vocals, and especially with that falsetto he tries on the final chorus, and he's cribbing from the asinine One Direction Little Things playbook and saying how much he's in love with all this girl's flaws, and that if this girl ever leaves him, Juice WRLD's gonna gun her down, and that this girl awoke him from his eternal slumber so that he can then poker face like Lady Gaga. But I guess the creaking guitar is at least trying to pull off a quasi Post Malone vibe that I could have seen working. Just a shame the rest of this is pure crap and is derivative as all hell. So yeah, this is still quite bad. Next, number 88, Rumor by Brice. What you say we make it true. We make it true. I don't know what to think about Lee Brice these days. Apparently this is a late album single from his self-titled album from late 2017 that's mostly failed to leave much of an impact because he's on Curb Records, which might be the gold standard for country label mismanagement, which is a real damn shame because I can see a lot of potential in this song. Yeah, there's a little bit too much unnecessary reverb when you already have some well-layered backing vocals, and more of a sultry vibe here anyway that's somewhat convincing, playing off the pedal steel, the organ, and the liquid guitars. And Lee Brice is not at all the sort of artist who can sell more of a slicker R&B cadence, but there is an organic timbre to the song, a pretty solid live groove with the live drums and the percussion, and Lee Brice has just enough hangdog charisma and a good voice in order to make this kind of work, lending a certain bit of soul to a hookup song about making all their rumors of their connection at the bar a reality. I mean, I'm not saying there's a lot here. For the hook feeling's a little bit overwritten, the song still strangely feels a little lacking in a little more detail, but I see the appeal of this. I wouldn't mind sticking around. Good song. Number 85, Undrunk by FLETCHER. So I'll be honest, when I saw the name FLETCHER, I only had the vaguest clue of who she was until I remembered her 2015 single Warpaint. Yeah, I remember that vaguely being a thing, mostly because the song was notable for nailing a lot of playlist placements and sounding like a total clusterfuck of instrumental ideas while feeling vaguely hollow in the end thanks to the content. I mean, there's banjos, there's some cavernous hollow percussion that sounds like it was pulling from African music, acoustic guitars, string sections, even some trap-inspired pieces shoved in there. It was a bit of a mess, not worth going back to. Anyway, she's got an EP coming out now, and this is a single from it, and look, there's potential here, especially in the writing. I like the commitment in highlighting the little details and the angst that keeps her from getting over this guy, especially when he's moved on and she's trying to find empty rebounds. Sadly, while I think there's a decent enough melody in the main blurred over passage, the mixing of the song's a mess. The blocky backing vocals that aren't blended nearly as well as they should be, the sloppy volume leveling around the bridge, a roiling bass that kind of blows out the entire mix on the hook. It's a song with real potential, but desperately needs some polish around the edges to hit greatness. Honestly, it's not a bad song at all, but she needs a different mix or a remix fast if she wants this to get traction, because this is good, it should be great. Number 77, My Bad by Khalid.
Yeah, we been wildin'. We was cool, yeah, we was vibin'. Gotta put my phone on silent, so my.
So am I the only one a bit concerned about this upcoming Khalid album? I mean, I thought Better was a really damn good song, and it makes sense it was tacked onto the album off the Sun City EP, but I thought Talk was a complete misstep, and I was a little bit nervous to see if My Bad would connect and play to some of his strengths maybe. And yeah, this might be better, but I'm still not really liking this as much as I would hope so. Now, for one, the clinking trap percussion has more heft than actual groove over that guitar loop, and once again misses the key point that I've always tried to make about Khalid, namely that he should try and bring in some more organic grooves. Now, granted, the emotional through line of the song kind of hits a weird note too, where the miscommunications have only worsened and this is more of a weary, dejected kiss-off, which, okay, he can sell it, but the song just feels kind of inert overall. It's not bad, but not nearly as good as it should be. Number 75, Here With Me by Marshmello featuring CHVRCHES.
Now I know I'm falling in deep, 'cause I need you here with me.
This is not the way I wanted to see CHVRCHES break onto the Hot 100. I mean, credit to them for finally getting here. Even if I didn't love that last album, I still argue that's more Greg Kurstin's fault than theirs, and I still really like this group. They made my year-end list with songs and albums in multiple years, but it'd have to be goddamn Marshmello to put them there. Now, let me make this clear. It's hard to dilute the punch of Lauren Mayberry's vocals and the chugging guitars behind her on the first half of the hook. They're promising, at least until Marshmello delivers yet another sterile trap drop, but again, there's something here, right? Well, that's until you realize the actual tune and the content are beyond generic and a far cry from the razor-edge synth-pop in writing and production that made CHVRCHES such a powerhouse. Placing Lauren Mayberry a step away from her strengths in the content for a song, it's just not all that interesting. So yeah, as much as I might love this group, this is really bland and undercooked, just like nearly everything that Marshmello's put out. This should be so much better, but I'm not surprised that it isn't. Still, I'd probably take it over. Number 66, Maze by Juice WRLD.
Everything's okay, but it's not really okay. My life's a death ray. I'm numb in my pain with codeine rain.
Okay, the last couple songs here are all from Juice WRLD. Let's get through them quick. And let's start off with one that's, again, not quite terrible. But in this case, it's more because it barely even exists. Lumpy, grainy trap beat, desaturated guitar, and Juice WRLD's auto-tune caterwauling as he talks about converting all his pain into more money, cars, and drugs. You know, just so we all can recognize how mercenary this whole exercise is. But honestly, there's nothing worth caring about here, folks. So let's move on to number 47, Fast by Juice WRLD.
Feeling really bad. Time really moves fast. Better hurry up and get in your bag.
Well, here we go, folks. Here's arguably the best Juice WRLD song that we got this week. Yeah, the guitar is crushed into mush behind the auto-tune and the trap beat, and Juice WRLD sounds lobotomized. But with some of the singing on the verses, I can almost squint and hear a Lil Yachty-esque appeal to the melody. Granted, we still have to deal with the second verse, where he's rich, but still sad as a bitch. But hey, don't blame him. He doesn't want to be seen as an asshole, really. It's just this life and all the drugs he's doing. You know, I'm no Future fan by any means, but he always made his most compelling music when he actually acknowledged his shittiness and was wallowed in the deepest parts of it. But for Juice WRLD, he's got no incentive to take responsibility, and the melody's way too bright for him to even try. So yeah, while not being terrible, this is pretty far from good as well. But you know what? It's at least not number 41, Empty by Juice WRLD.
I may go wrong. Don't tempt me, big bullet hole. Don't send me.
When I first heard this song, I thought it had to be a joke. I mean, it had to be, right? Nobody in their right mind could actually take this seriously. I mean, let's start with how the production sounds so damn flimsy. The cheap trap beat, the grainy auto-tune, the faint twinkling pianos, and then Juice WRLD alternating between a really bouncy flow on the first verse and his howling hook that would probably humiliate Simple Plan. I mean, the one good line I got from the song was, low-key, I've been looking for the signs, but all I can find is a sign of the times. But does that make up for the black hole in the place of his soul? Or how he's not suicidal, only thing suicide is suicide does? Or how with the rampant drug abuse juxtaposed with the flexing, he fails to highlight how either has much punch whatsoever? And that's probably the biggest consistent problem I have with Juice WRLD's angst. Whenever he gets vaguely close to something that's heartfelt or meaningful or vulnerable, he'll undercut it. But that's so overwrought and miserable that there's nothing close to a cohesive vibe that can be actually created. And in this case, look, let's be honest, this is humiliating and pretty terrible. But which Juice WRLD song is worse this week? Because honestly, upon reflection, for as asinine as Empty is, it's kind of hilarious, and the deeper toxicity doesn't quite manifest quite as much as it does on Flaws and Sins, which is going to get the worst of the week with Empty as a dishonorable mention. Now for the best of the week, yeah, slim pickings here, but I think for actually having some distinctive flavor while still sounding like a decent country song, Rumor by Brice is going to get that, with Undrunk by FLETCHER as the honorable mention. Again, I'm convinced that a good mix with that song, it can be salvaged. Now, next week, look, given how Interscope has mismanaged things and will likely not pull off a Rich the Kid album bomb, I'm expecting next week to be pretty quiet. But if this week has proven me anything, it's that I can be very, very wrong. So stay tuned for what will happen. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.